In this lesson, we're going to practice a simple yet fun rack focus. Like the other exercises, you do not need to copy exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to include this file as a starting point for you if you are one of those lazy people that we sometimes hear about, but feel free to create your own example for this one. Here's a similar thing done with a couple of monkey heads. You can do what you like as long as you're showing the rack focus effect. Let's go. So here is that file that you saw in the intro there. So I'm doing a little bit of a perspective cheat. I've got a really big rack, which is far away, and I've got a really small focus, which is front. So that's how I'm getting the depth perception there. You can use whatever objects that you want for this exercise, just as long as you're showing the rack focus effect. Okay, so this camera is just a normal camera. There's nothing special about it. There is no camera rig or anything like that. I'm just going to do the animation with this this normal camera. All right, so we're ready to start our animation. So I'm going to go over to our data tab. You can see I'm on a perspective camera, 50mm, so that's all default. I'm going to enable my limits. So under the viewport display, turn on your limits. So this is going to give me my depth of field, the distance. And then down a little bit further, I'm going to enable our depth of field. So this is going to activate it. And in our viewport up here, I want to just make sure that we can actually see our depth of field. So I'm going to turn it on in our viewport. You can see nothing much is happening at the moment, but we'll deal with that later. It's also, just so that you're aware, the depth of field works better with cycles. It's more accurate than if you use the Eevee render. But when you're looking through the viewport, it's actually using the Eevee renderer anyway. So what you see in the viewport isn't going to be exactly what you get in the output if you're using the cycles. So because I'll be using cycles for the final render, just use the Eevee as kind of a guide. All right, hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to start animating our camera now. So in the camera data, let's turn on our distance. Actually, I'm going to jump to the top view. I can actually just left click and drag this one and position it, and that's given me the distance there. So I don't need it to be pointing straight at it. I'm looking at the perpendicular line that's coming off here from the main one. And as I mentioned earlier in the course, I'm using this depth of field utilities little add-on. Now you don't need to use it, but it's just going to help us visualize what's going on a little bit better. So I'm just going to disable that and enable it again, and you can see I've got my green lines here. So I'm going to lower down the f-stop number, which is the same thing as over here. So I think I'm just going to drag it and see what is our value. I don't want to go too much. So this, remember, this is actually just a guide. You can see how blurry this is, but it'll be nothing like that when you do the final render. I'm looking at how far our green bit is going, and I want the whole word to be in focus. So 0.3 is a little bit too much. Just make it a little bit bigger. Actually, 0.4 looks about right. It looks like it's got all of it. Although I don't need to worry about the back section here because it's behind. That's looking good. So time to keyframe. So I'm going to keyframe our distance by hitting I, keyframe our f-stop by hitting I. And then I'm going to jump to, because I want it to hold for a good amount of time, I'm going to say 20 frames later. So on frame 21, I'm going to keyframe that again. So I and I. Now I'm going to do my rack focus over, let's make it nice and easy. Let's do it 20 frames later. And this is where we're going to change. So I'm going to move this to our focal point here. Now I'm going to do that same trick. So I'm going to drag it here and click so that it is there. But we need to change our depth of field because I want to fill this whole thing in. So we need to actually make the f-stop bigger. Bigger means more in focus. So what do we want here? Maybe, do we want the whole thing? Maybe let's go 1.5. That looks about right. And then make sure that we key that. So key. And then we want to hold this. Let's do the same thing. We're going to hold it for 20 frames. So Shift D, duplicate. And then we want to go back to the default. So on frame 81, yep. I'm going to just grab this keyframe here and then drag it over here. Let's see how it looks in our view. There we go. We've got our rack focus going on. Super duper easy. Now, if we were going to render this one, so if you just do a viewport render, I'll just go like this frame here. I'll just show you what I mean. So viewport render is going to look like our viewport up here. But if we do an actual real render, and I'll just fast forward that while our render is happening. through the powers of editing, that only took a second. So that is going to be our final result there. But obviously we're going to render the entire animation rather than just the one frame. There you have it, a nice, quick and easy rack focus. Now that you know how to do this, use it wisely.